Hi. Is the mic level all right? No? Okay. Mic level okay? Good?
Yeah.
Okay. So, how many of you all are like new to TypeScript? Okay, a few of you. How many of you all are new to React as well? Okay. Okay. So if you already know how to do React with TypeScript, you're not going to learn anything new. So I'm glad that there's at least a few of you here who are new to one or both of these. So this is React with TypeScript, how to begin. This is all really easy beginner stuff so that you can get started and get moving and then use all of the wonderful other skills that you're going to learn at this meetup in your React project. All right, so hi, I'm James. Alex introduced me. You can email me. My email address is really easy to remember. Also, I have cards that have my email address on them if you need to, if you don't want to write it down. I work at a company called 4C Insights. We're a data analytics company for advertising on the digital platforms, so Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, and the rest. So companies put their ads through us to those platforms, and then we give them data back. So it's the entire pipeline. We're hiring. The line is, we are always hiring good engineers. I just graduated from a boot camp in March. So if you are new and they think you're a good engineer, they'll hire you even if you're new. Okay. So I also get a bonus if I refer you. So talk to me if you're thinking about applying. And then what I said earlier about just recently graduating from a boot camp, I graduated from General Assembly, the software engineering immersive, just this March. So if you have not started on that journey or only part of the way along, I recommend them highly. If you are looking to train some people in your organization how to code, they're great for that. And if you're looking to hire bright young engineers like me, but not me because I got hired by somebody already, find a General Assembly grad. We're great, or I think they're great. We'll see what everybody thinks about me. So the basics of creating a React app. I'm not going to tell you why to use React. If you aren't convinced to use React, I'm not going to try to convince you. But I will tell you how to start a React project. This is, after some research, the best way to begin a React app using TypeScript. npx is a command that's provided by npm that runs an arbitrary package. This is recommended by the Create React App developers as the way to do it. Instead of installing it on your machine, this will pull down the most recent Create React App and run Create React App on your machine based on that. If you're worried about the fact that you use yarn and this is an npm command, don't worry about it. If you have yarn, Create React App will use yarn instead of npm to install your packages. So if you're worried that Create React App is going to pull down the entire internet and take 5 minutes, if you have yarn and it's already cached, it'll do that in about 10, 20 seconds, the way that it always does. The TypeScript flag at the end is a lot nicer than it used to be. About 5 months ago when I tried it, all it did was create a source directory, moved all the files into it, and named the files .ts instead of .js, and that's all you got. Now it even includes a couple of annotations to get you started. So it's much nicer than it was. It'll get you off and running on a good footing. So this is the directory structure. So you'll see build with some with 3 dots after it. That's build over there on the right of the screen. As you can see, all the files that you would normally see in the root of a React project now live in a source directory. So that's where your app.tsx lives. That's where your your index.html is going to be all the way in public where it normally lives. There's really not much that you have to mess with here. But as you start adding files, you're going to add them into source instead of into your root directory of your project. Everything's set up nicely, so your tsconfig.json has some nice settings in it. Everything's just ready to go. And inside of your app.tsx, you're going to find const app with an annotation, react.fc. We're going to get to that in a minute. And then you get some nice ES6 syntax, creating a new function. So that's the parens and the arrow. And then you're going to see that the type of react.fc is angle bracket p equal curly bracket, close angle bracket. So React provides some types for you, and the react.fc is the type for a functional component. Since it doesn't know what is going to go in your functional component, it gives you what's called a generic. If you want to brush up on generics, there was a great talk at the last meetup. It's on video, and you can go ahead and check that out. But the basic idea is that you put whatever it is that thing doesn't know inside of your angle brackets to tell it. And we're going to get to that. So inside of your function definition is a return statement. This is all pretty normal for a React functional component. You have that div, and then you have these JSX things that you're passing props to. Okay, cool. The only thing that's different is, as I mentioned, you have that type annotation for the React functional component. You're gonna, where the ellipses are, you're gonna place your functions. These are your helper functions to do your calculations for you, so that when you render whatever it is, it gets rendered correctly. So at the very bottom of this, there's a curly buttons. So buttons is declared over here, right? Const buttons, and that is its own JSX component, and that passes down some props. The values and whatever each key value, those are calculated inside the functions. So all pretty normal React stuff. The one thing that you might think is kind of weird is that there's a type annotation for key clicked. It's going to be type command, and we're going to get to that. So command is going to be imported from your types file. You create that for yourself. And then you're going to create some buttons. So you're going to define button over here. And so it's going to deal with the props that you passed in and display a button on the screen. So this is how you might make, for example, a calculator. That was the example app that I was creating over here. In the type definition, as I discussed earlier, you can go into the type definition. So inside of your directory structure, there's some node modules that don't show them here. Oops. There's going to be a directory at types, and then you can go into the React file, and then you can search for the actual types. So for FC functional components, it gets defined as function component, and that itself takes a generic, and that is defined as an interface. So an interface is an unimplemented type with a description of what the type should contain. So it requires props. So there's no question mark after props, and then that gets annotated with what is going to come with the props. And then prop types, context types, default props, and display name, they're optional. So you don't have to provide those, but you can if you want. So if you are familiar with prop types, that's React's native way of dealing with typing. A lot of people don't use type props anymore with TypeScript, but the difference between prop types and TypeScript is that TypeScript is run at compile time and prop types are run at runtime. So if you need guarantees at runtime, if things are going to change between compile time and runtime that you're not sure about, you might want to throw in some prop types in as well. Okay, so what's going on here? Inside of your button component, there's going to be this line. This is the thing that makes the TypeScript work. So if you started and just did the -- TypeScript flag, eventually you're going to get a warning in your app that says, hey, I can't import this button because because of an implied any. And so I have a horror story about trying to teach myself TypeScript at the same time I was in a boot camp. And so I said, well, I'm just going to just make everything TypeScript and deal with it when I get there during the code along lectures. So there were a lot of just, okay, I'm just going to call this any for now, and it's just going to be fine. So, and I'm going to figure out later. And this is what I figured out later. This is what makes your types flow through your React app, is declaring your types together with your component. So in your component file, you declare the type for props, and you're just going to give it the shape of the object that the props is going to come in. That's all that's going on here. You just have to remember that this lives in the component file, not in the file that's calling the component. So that's where the error is going to show up. It's going to show up in the file that calls button. But if you declare it inside of button, that's what makes the error go away. And then once again, we have a type called command. And that's actually something really subtle and nice. So if you're using class components in React instead of prop components, the main difference is that you're also going to have to bring in state. So instead of the angle brackets with just props, you're going to declare state as well. And then state is exactly like props. It is the shape of the object that you're going to bring in. Hooks. Okay. So in order to avoid this mess with declaring your state type, in the React type definitions, state actually contains a lot of any's. There's a great talk at this meetup. If you go back, you'll find why not to use any ever. State has a lot of any's, so if you use hooks instead, you have nicely defined types without any flowing through your app. And when you use hooks, you're going to see that there is going to be a rather strange type declaration for your hooks. So in the calculator, there are two different kinds of buttons. They're either numbers or they're operators, so like plus, minus, or numbers. And each one is going to have a hook associated with it. And then the hooks are called or defined using const, where it uses this array destructuring syntax. And then this is the syntax for getting the type correctly. So operator is a type that I define in my types file. We're going to get to that later. And then React.setStateAction is just what what you put that declaration inside. Okay, so here is what's going on inside the calculator. I've been telling you that we're going to get here, so here we are. The declaration of these types more or less describes the state machine. So what it is possible to do using the app is declared using your type declaration. So digits are a union of some string literals. So this is a string literal type. This is a really nice thing about TypeScript, where instead of using a type called an enum, you just say this type is just these particular strings, because a type is basically just a set, so the set of possible values that type will accept. So the digits are literally just empty or any of these digits. The operators are empty or any of these digits. You'll see that we use an empty string instead of null. So it's going to complain anytime it's either undefined or null, but an empty string is acceptable. This makes it easier to process later on because then you can expect that it's going to be an empty string instead of having to check for it. You get less weird truthy falsy stuff going on. And then a command is either a digit or an operator. And then here's how the app works in the state type. There is a buffer for before the operator, a buffer for after the operator, and a buffer for whatever the operator is. So if you remember in your childhood, you had a calculator, right? It had a light bar that got electricity from the room, and you could type in numbers, and then when you pressed an operator, the number went from the big display to a little display, and then it showed you what operator it said. That's basically the logic going on here. So the function calls for the calculator, it just moves things between the buffers and changes things as you press the buttons. So it's a calculator that acts like an old style calculator. Okay. That's React. What makes the string literal types really nice is when you get the app to be bigger and the state becomes more complicated to take care of. If you use Redux, you might be familiar with having to declare what are called types in Redux. They're actually very similar to TypeScript types, but they were implemented in plain JavaScript without TypeScript. So there are a lot of these constants with single values. But if you use string literal union types, you can reduce it into a single line, and you don't have to have the messy capital letters, shouty capital letters everywhere. So this Redux is going to eventually sing "T'es pas genou et pied," because somebody took too much French. Redux is made up of types, actions. So there's only going to be one action in this Redux store because we're doing something really simple. It's just a little example. It's just going to go next so that you start singing the song, and then you go to the next word in the song, and you start with head because that's how the song starts. And then your reducer just returns the next value. But because we've defined it as a string literal type, all of this just comes through very cleanly without any trouble. If you remove any of these, it shouts at you. It's nice. GraphQL with Apollo. I'm not actually going to do that because this talk has been long enough. I just wanted to kind of preview it. There is actually a tool that Apollo gives you that generates your TypeScript types based on your GraphQL schema, which, as you know, is already typed. Or if you didn't already know that it was already typed, your GraphQL is based on types and how they relate to each other. And the way that they describe it, the best description of GraphQL that I've heard is that your graph is just your relationship between your types. And then here are some resources that I used to put this together. this long URL is a great cheat sheet. It has everything that I put in here plus a whole bunch more things. If you're wondering how to type something, it tells you. Then there are these 2 O'Reilly books. One is called Programming TypeScript. If you're familiar with books with the title Programming Whatever, it just tells you how to do it in a really detailed way. Kind of assumes that you know kind of what you're doing, but it's comprehensive. And then there's another book by O'Reilly. It's not out yet. If you have the O'Reilly Learning Platform, you can access it in early access. It's called Effective TypeScript. So it teaches you how to write better TypeScript than what you might do if you were coming from a different language and just assumed that TypeScript is like C#. And then there's another book if you're more of a beginner like me. This is in Manning's early access program. It's called Programming with Types. They use TypeScript, but it instead of being about programming in TypeScript, it's about how to understand type systems more generally. So really helpful, really conceptual, but I learned a lot. Okay. Questions? Yeah.
Which version of React did you use, and where did you get the typings for React from?
So I used React 16.8. Okay. So the command create React app, this command, it gets you the most recent version of React, unless you pass it a flag to tell it what version of React to get. And then the types come from definitely typed, so like @types/React. Okay. But you don't have to worry about it because if you pass the TypeScript flag, it pulls down the types for you, because if it didn't, it'd be really dumb. Yeah, absolutely. I'll share it with Alex and then yeah, this is going on YouTube. So hey, I get to yeah.
Oh yeah, not a question, but just a quick click too for somebody who's learning this stuff too. There's a Udemy course by like Steven Grider that covers this. It's really good. It's like 20 hours, but it goes super deep on all of this stuff. So
yeah, because when you have like 20 minutes of this, you're like, it doesn't get you very far. But 20 hours will get you a lot further. Because I was trying to hack this together. It shouldn't.
You should see his code reviews. I actually just had a comment. I woke up this morning to my daughter singing the French version of Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes. So I really appreciated that.
Thanks. Okay.